Hello and welcome to the interview on France 24. My guest is Michael Spence, a Nobel Prize of Economics. Hello and welcome.
Fun to be with you.
Thanks for being with us. What's your take on this agreement that the Eurozone leaders managed to pull together? And, after 10 hours of discussions, there's threefolds: bank recapitalization, a revised EFSF, and 50% haircut on Greek debt held by private investors. Is the euro saved, according to you?
No, I wouldn't say it's completely safe, but it's a huge, major step forward. I mean, it really is
huge,
progress.
you would say?
Yeah, I would say huge. I used to put the chance of a turn down, another downturn in Europe and then America soon after at about 50%. And I've dropped it down to at least maybe 15%. So there's still work to do. It has to be implemented well. The recapitalization of the bank part is quite complex. There's private money and then money from the country where the bank is headquartered, and then regional money, and then the, EFSF in the background.
Do you think that states should actually take stakes in banks?
If they have to, yeah. I mean, I think, you can't, this is the same situation as in 2008. If the banking system locks up because of undercapitalization and solvency risk, then that can bring the economy down overnight. The payment system locks up, credit freezes. You don't like to do it, but you have to do it. So that part's good. And I think Greece is in better shape now. I think there's a huge unaddressed challenge with respect to how Greece is going to grow without the exchange rate mechanism or inflation or any of the other normal tools. So that's still on the agenda. And then we need aggressive reform, growth-oriented packages from Italy in particular, but also some of the other countries, including Spain.
What should Italy do to actually sustain growth when we know the difficulties the country is going through?
Well, it has a high, debt to GDP ratio. On the other hand, the north of the country is very healthy. It's where I live. Very vigorous economy, sort of a little bit like Switzerland or Germany. So there's lots of strengths there. They need to liberalize the labor markets. They need to invest more heavily in sort of technology base of the economy. They probably need to reform public sector employment practices. They would be nice if some of the people who are self-employed paid a little more taxes. That would help. Whether they can do that, I don't know.
And you live there.
What?
And you live there.
And I live there. Well, I don't earn most of my money there, so I don't pay taxes in large amounts in Italy. My wife pays taxes because the people who are employed by corporations have the taxes paid for them. I think that's normal in Europe. And
what's the future of Silvio Berlusconi there?
Well, it's very shaky. He doesn't have much support in his coalition. He's heavily dependent on the Northern League. The Northern League has gone along so far, but they could pull the plug at any time. And I think, in terms of risk, there's been a lot of risk in the markets associated with concern about the ability and willingness of basically the political systems in America and Europe to respond vigorously, and I don't think that risk is all gone. So that's a remaining item on the to-do list. And then the ECB has made a conditional commitment to sort of prevent a contagion and run up in the yields on the Spanish and French debt. But that's conditional on, serious reform packages. So that's all in the future.
With the 50% haircut on Greek debt for private investors, is there any contagion risks, according to you, to countries such as Italy?
Yes, but the contagion risk rises dramatically depending on the performance or lack of performance of the Italian government. So I think if the Italian government, either the current one or a new technical one, moves aggressively, that significantly lowers the risk, and the ECB is quite capable of taking care of the rest simply by going in and buying the sovereign debt when yields start to run up and the prices.
The ECB will remain the ECB. It will still buy debt, you think?
I think so. I mean, that's crucial.
Even if the Germans don't want it.
Yeah, I think the Germans have accepted that part of the stabilization process is, you see, if the ECB is aggressive enough, they won't have to do it many times because people who hold the bonds, will realize that there isn't gonna be very much effective contagion running around. So a sort of enthusiastic, aggressive responses to contagion will contain it pretty well.
What do you think of the extended EFSF? Will the Eurozone have a stronger capacity to react to the crisis with this
I
mechanism?
think so, yeah. There's more money there now. I mean, people debate whether it's enough, and it's very hard to know what the answer to that is. I mean, what enough is.
It should be $1 trillion dollars?
Well,
euros, sorry.
Yeah, it's around €1 trillion now, kind of all in.
Is this enough?
I suspect it's probably enough. I know people who think it's not, but they're probably making the worst case, scenario assumptions. And
it could sustain Italy, for example?
No, you can't bail Italy out. I mean, the sovereign debt is too big. No, the only solution in the Italian case is to contain the contagion and have Italy bail itself out, in a sense, through growth-oriented policies and very low or zero deficits.
Apparently, the revised EFSF would allow China to step in. Why would China be interested in actually getting involved in the Eurozone debt situation, and under which conditions?
Well, their interest is fairly clear. I mean, they have a huge interest in the restoration of stability and growth in the euro area, and for that matter, in all of the advanced countries. They're partially decoupled. They can sustain growth if we go flat, but if we go down, they can't make up the loss of demand. I mean, it's just not possible, even aggregated with the other major emerging economies. So our interests are completely aligned, and so they will be a responsible contributor to a stabilization plan. They won't go it alone. I mean, they don't think it's appropriate, nor does anybody else. I mean, so they would prefer, and I think will hold back until there's a multilateral effort to provide some additional external funding to the Eurozone. The other thing that isn't well known is that the Chinese have 3.2, probably more now, in reserves. Some of those are, I guess, more than half are in dollar-denominated assets, mostly sovereign debt. But a very big chunk of it's in euros. So they already hold a lot of euro-denominated debt. Now, how it's divided up between sort of Germany, France, the big stable countries, and the periphery, nobody actually knows. Maybe the Bank for International Settlements has a little data, and they're quite responsible investors. They're not going to pull out just because they get scared, because they have no interest in doing that. That would, in fact, add to the problem rather than the reverse.
Germany seems to be the current leader in the Eurozone. Do you think that Berlin would impose its vision in Europe, which is based on strict public finance? Angela Merkel spoke about sanctions in case a country did not respect the European Stability Pact.
Yeah, I think they have a great deal of influence now, because if they, it's a very interesting situation. I mean, they can threaten to sort of, withdraw and not participate, in the various programs, bailouts and other things but actually it's not in their interest either, and certainly the government knows it, the chancellor knows it. Whether the German people all know it, I don't know. So it's it's an interesting situation, we're literally pulling out, saying we've had enough of this. These countries aren't behaving responsibly. It's a little bit like shooting at your own foot with a gun. So everybody's kind of in it together. And the Germans have a lot of influence, there's no question.
Do you think that France should actually go further in terms of reducing its own deficits? Should France raise the VAT, for example, to get the money it needs right now?
No, I don't think so. I mean, in a weak growth environment, unless you need a very large stimulus, it doesn't make sense. I think that the focus probably should be on combating the headwinds to growth at this point. And the exceptions to that are countries that are going to need some help with growth, because they just don't have any additional fiscal flexibility at all.
But they also have to reduce their public deficits, and the growth provisions are not as expected.
That's right. I mean, to be honest with you, you can reduce your deficits, but the only practical way to reduce the debt to GDP ratio is to grow. I mean, if you try to do it with deficit reduction, you'll kill as much growth, you know, and do as much damage. And when you get far enough into the hole you've dug for yourself, you end up in the situation Greece is in which they just there wasn't any way to stabilize it.
So should France maybe cut expenses instead of
Might, yeah, I don't know.
raise VAT or?
Yeah, no, I don't. I mean, it's sort of a judgment call. I suspect not, but you know, that would be if I were leaning in one direction, it would be in that direction. In America, we have one group who wants to cut the deficits immediately. Most of us think that doing that will kill enough consumer demand and therefore growth that it's a bad idea. And so I think the majority view among policy-oriented people is that we should bring the deficits down and stabilize the fiscal situation, but
In America?
On a 5-year time horizon. But every country's a little bit different in this respect, but dramatic cuts in deficits in a low-growth environment doesn't sound to me like a good idea.
Thank you very much, Michael Spence, and thanks for watching. Stay with us on France 24.